Hi, this is Susanna Barton, founder of the Grand Plans online community, and I'm so glad you have joined us for Season 3, Episode 4 of the Grand Plans podcast. In this session, once again, we are at the Literary Lounge in Jacksonville, Florida, talking about the steps that we all need to take to create a grand plan that is workable. And in this episode, we look at steps 13, 14, 15, and 16. It's a really great conversation. We look at everything from trusting the people who love us to creating good community and embracing technology. So glad you're here with us. We'll talk to you in a minute. Okay, here we are. Season 3, Episode 4, back at the Literary Lounge around the big orange table. Here to talk about steps 13, 14, 15, and 16. So let's jump right in. We may have some folks coming in a little bit later, but the number 13 is a good one, and it's kind of hard to articulate well because there's a lot of nuances associated with this one, but it's trust the people who love you. And in some of my experiences, I think there is maybe I've seen this in some situations where the older adult is thinking that you might have ulterior motives or that you're not in this for their benefit. But what we need to remember all along, and whether it's writing it down or just keeping track of it ourselves, is that all the people who we've chosen to help us through life, and usually it's our kids or close friends, we can trust them and their judgments. So has anyone had any experiences with the trust issue? Has that been part of the equation for anyone? And if you have anything to say, just grab the old mic. There's one down there and this one right here.
Well, when it comes to the trust issue, when my mom was going through her decline, both physically and mentally, she was very angry and very untrusting about everything. She was sure that we were after her money, and so she was giving it all away to many different charities daily so that she would not have to give it to us. She also felt like we were trying to take control from her, which we kind of were, because she wasn't able to take care of herself and her affairs. But especially when it came to having to place her in a facility because of her memory issues. She was very unhappy with us, and she and my dad had always wanted to stay home, understandably. But I have already told my children repeatedly, when it comes that time when I'm having issues, take me somewhere, put me in there, and have them lock the door and don't worry about it. I probably won't remember who you are, so, you don't have to come see me like that. But I have started that conversation and repeat it often.
I think it is very common with dementia in particular, but I've seen that with older relatives who I think the trust comes in mostly when you're talking about trying to go to a facility, but also the driving. And whether or not to take the car away. And I have a relative who finally just had to tell his father that it was, in the shop, and then, because it was ongoing, and he's still the older gentleman who, was struggling with this would go around and look for his keys all the time. And it was constantly something top of mind for him. But they finally just, instead of really being truthful, the only thing that really kind of worked was to just sort of explain that it was gone and come up with a good reason that was plausible to his declining mind. So, it.
And I think even when we're not telling the whole truth in those situations, telling the little white helpful lies, I think we need to trust as we age that's okay, as long as it is for the right intention and the motives are right. So.
And I think it's just really important, to the point that you just made. I think it's really important to make sure you have those discussions to talk about the fact that the time's going to come when I might not agree, and I need you to make the right decision, and I need you to guide me. And I'm gonna, having the conversation where you talk a little bit about their desires. So that's great that you're putting it out there in the open, and so important.
Okay. Yes, this is a good one. For me, I look in listening to everybody talk about this issue of trust the people who love you. The first thing that comes to mind for me, and first and foremost, is that I am very concerned about identity theft. My mother, is it okay if I talk about her?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We're not.
Love you,
using
Mom.
Names or so.
This is all for you.
Yeah.
But she's on 2 different occasions this year has received a letter, one from her bank and another from Equifax, saying we denied credit because we couldn't identify the person who was trying to take out the credit. One was for like a jewelry store, and then the other was Equifax. And so with all that we know today, nothing is secure, really. And so I went to her and I said, we need to set up some things just to protect you. And it's like, she just closes down. And I said, well, so I had several conversations with her about this and told her what I've done and what my children have done. Put a freeze on your account, pull your credit reports, just, and then you can get a product. It just either is overwhelming for her, or she doesn't trust me, or I don't know, but I can't get her to budge. So finally, I went to her and I said, would you please think about who you trust the most? Is it, your woman at Wells Fargo or whatever, who's in charge of all this? Someone that you can really trust. Please get in touch with that person and ask their advice. Okay, well, she said she did. And that person was going to send her a packet of information like what LifeLock or just products that she could look at to see what she'd like to do. Well, on 2 different occasions, I said, "Where is that? Has it come yet?" It's been over a couple months. Well, it hadn't come yet. And I said, "Well, can we at least put a freeze on your accounts?" So she had my son do it. She wouldn't let me do it. She wanted my son. I'm like, okay, that's fine. But and then she just did it with one. You're supposed to do it with all 3. It's not a fraud alert. It's a freeze. So I don't know what's going on, but I've had to pull back and just let it go. Yeah, I don't know what else to do.
That's
one of my sisters
really hard
said,
when she's in jeopardy.
Concerning.
Yeah.
It's crime. But it is. Someone has some of her information, obviously. Yeah. So, trust the people who love you, Mom. But having the conversation now before later, there's going to be times when she's going to have to really trust. So that's a good suggestion.
Yeah, and I think you're thinking about asking your mom, who do you trust the most? That was really good, and that's smart to bring it full circle. Like, do you trust this email that you're getting, or this strange text, or a letter in the mail from right, or a letter in the mail? You can trust the person who's managing you, and even trusting her grandchild to step in. That's at least something.
Yeah, that was a really good move, because they have learned certain people are experts, and they might need to hear it from someone else. So I applaud you. We talked about that with doctors in another session as well. Sometimes they need to hear certain things from the doctor. So the person at the bank or whoever, that's yeah.
Okay. Well, good.
Yeah.
Yay me.
Right. Yeah, we're talking about trust and how we can sometimes it's hard that becomes a problem for our parents to trust that we have the best intentions and are thinking of them and protecting them. And sometimes it's hard, and sometimes all we can do is have conversations with our own children about how, we're going to trust them no matter what, and that we can do that as long as our children are straight up good folks. But
Well intentioned.
you're right.
Hopefully we've raised them up well.
Yes.
It's funny. Thank you. I have the freeze on all my accounts, but I never thought of doing it for my parents. I should do that.
Yes,
It's
yeah,
never
do
dawned
it.
on me to have to freeze their accounts. One thing, they get paper statements and they've never wanted to have online banking. And I've talked to them recently. I'm like, we need to get, you need to let me set up online accounts, or access to all of your accounts so that we can see daily. Because I said, you're waiting until your statement comes in the mail. And I said, if something happens, I said, I look at my accounts every day.
Yeah.
If there's fraud, and I've explained, this happened to my grandmother when she died at the age of 100, but I had been paying all of her bills. I had a debit card on her account, and I may have mentioned this before. I never used the debit card. As I was closing out her account after she died, we had about, a lot of money in the account. I was getting ready to split it up between my dad and my aunt, and I just happened to see a $10 charge. I was like, and then I won for like $2 or $3, and I said, there should be no charges on this, on a debit card. And I was like, I have a debit card, and I'm the only one who does it. I've never used it, and it's in a drawer. So of course I caught it. They took care of it. The bank did. Could have been a lot of money gone. And so I try to use that with my parents, and they both said, yes, that's fine. Okay. All right, whatever. And I need to do it. I just haven't gotten around to doing it. As soon as I get their jitterbugs transferred over from their other phones to their new phones, which I just got them jitterbug phones. You were talking about your parents have a jitterbug phone. One of them. Okay. Well, I got mine. Your dad does. Right. Well, so my dad was using his today, his new one, and he likes it. So that's good. And my mother's like, I haven't used it yet. And I said, well, why don't you use it? Why don't you play with it? Well, you need to show me how. I said, just play with it. I said, you can't hurt anything. Call somebody. Call Dad. Call me. Just say, I'm just testing it. Okay. So I said, I just need you to play with it and use it so that if you ever really do need it, you know how to use it. But, it's like a computer. Anything's new and they don't want to try, I might mess something up. I said, well, you've got this other phone over here that's a lot harder to use and you never use, but you use it. This one's easier to use. Try it. Yeah. So we'll see. But that is a good point about the locking, the freezing.
Yeah, because
Forgot
you
about
can lift
that.
it like that and then just,
I know.
and just set it back up.
Yeah.
It's just
Because they don't
it's
take
really
out,
good.
any credit
But it prevents someone else
from doing that.
sitting
Yeah.
there and doing it.
Thank you.
Especially with the Equifax
Right.
breach a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
you freeze their,
Sorry. Just you freeze your account.
So you call, or you can go online to each of the credit reporting companies. Yeah, but you have to contact them. And I think what I did is I called, and it was probably automated if I remember correctly. But then you go through the process. They have to identify you or the person that you're, whose account you're trying to close, and then they will issue you a PIN. Okay, specific for just Equifax or whatever the company for that person, and then they'll also follow up with a letter recapping what you did with that PIN, and you just put that in a file folder. And then if you want to open it up again, you just call them back, go through the process, and then you have to enter that PIN.
open
And-
what up again?
Open or close. What they're doing is you're freezing the information within your account.
So no one can apply for credit.
Right. No one can see what's in your
No one
account.
can apply for
No one
credit.
can apply
Okay.
for credit in your name. They can't use your social security number to apply for credit. It prevents that from happening. It's a real good thing, and
We should all have that.
absolutely,
I have it.
absolutely.
Okay.
well, and I just wanted to add here, and maybe we'll move on to technology. Skip. That does make a little more sense. But so, two things. Did you do that on your mom's behalf, like as her representative, or did she?
I'll have to ask my son.
Because that it gets technical with any kind of financial institutions. Banks are horrible about, and if you have your documents lined up and you're legal to be their power of attorney or to make decisions on their behalf or speak for them, it takes 10 hoops.
Put you
Where
through the
most,
ringer. Oh,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
Which is
So-
a good thing.
Yes, it is a good thing, because my second point is that the elderly population are just so open to criminal activity, fraud, all the things. And in my experience, one of the husband in the situation had given his debit card to a caregiver. And again, this gets back to the trust. Like, you can trust me, the person that you appointed. You cannot trust your caregiver. I mean, sadly, with your financial information, caregivers are great people, but be careful. You can't trust them with your passwords and your account information. And he had given this caregiver his debit card, and she was making car payments on it. And so we had to call in the police and file a report. And it was just layer after layer of, things were misplaced trust.
And they're
That's-
naive. I think
yes.
there's a level of naivety
Yeah.
and all that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's important.
Yes. Trusting the right people
Of
and.
course, the bad thing is now I've got to do it for my mom and for my dad, and that's 6 things I got to do.
It's
Yeah.
it's easy.
I know. I've done it for myself.
But you're right,
But there's
it
3,
is.
and there's 2 of them, so there's 6.
Things.
So let's bridge on over into 15, which is to be relevant and keep up with key technology. This is so important, and some of it overlaps with the financial and trust piece. If we don't keep up with technology, as we've all probably seen with our special friends and loved ones, older loved ones, it becomes a real problem when you need to communicate, like we do with our friends and family. If I've known elderly adults in my life who don't use the microwave, so guess what? Every time it's time to feed someone's supper, you got to go over there and press a button on the microwave, because that was not a learned technology. Even for entertainment, that sounds so silly, but it's important when you're stuck at home more than you used to be, and if you don't know how to use a smart TV or to download movies or to do the things that you can be left out of some things. So I see it as a real important thing that we can all make an effort to keep up with and encourage our parents when appropriate. So I don't know, has anyone had any situations?
Well, I think the
involving
biggest thing is to
technology?
try to be open to counsel. So you're suggesting people just, I love the idea of just play with it. You can't really mess it up. They're always worried about messing it up. But I think also not shut down when someone tries to show you, because that's the thing that I've seen, which is, oh, just forget it. It's not worth it. This is way too many steps. When in theory, it's not. It's just unfamiliar. But the other thing I've seen is that the language is so different. If you're talking about the language, it feels completely foreign to them. If you're talking about to a senior citizen and anything online, anything related to the internet, it's all just like so foreign, and some people just don't want to invest in it. They just want to go with what they knew. And so I think it's not even keeping up with the technology, but being willing to let others help you with it rather than just shut down over it.
Yeah, that's good. Good point. Whoops.
So one thing along those lines, when my mother-in-law was still alive, and she died at the age of 89, she was very sharp up until the day she died. But she was living across the street from us, and she had a microwave that she'd been using for years. Well, it stopped working, so we had to get a new one. She set it on fire like 3 times.
The new one?
Yeah, because she could not. It was like, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. It was very simple. It was push button. It was twice she set it on fire. Luckily, she was living across the street from us. But the fire engines were called twice for setting a fire. And I showed her how to use it. And she, oh, yeah. She thought, she acted like she understood it. But yeah,
Stuff too long?
I don't know what she did.
I didn't know you could do that.
I don't know what she did, but it was when she was living at
She
in
didn't. She
Norman's
didn't
house across the
stand
street.
in front of it, did she? Like, I was always traumatized by the microwave. Like, don't stand in front of the microwave.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
but yeah, but
Put metal, like a metal container that.
I don't know what she did, but I still, I mean, you know, and then once she ended up moving with us, she used my microwave, but then I was usually right there with her. But I was like, Mimi, this is just like the one. It was very similar to the one you had at your old place. That you've been using for years, cooked all the time with it. And like I said, so that was one of those. It always amazed me that she just couldn't get the hang of it. And I see that with my parents too. They've got an old microwave that they've had for like 40 years. It's probably not good. It's an old Amana radar range. They love it. They got a brand new one over the stove. They never use it. Never use it. The only reason and I think they replaced it because the clock stopped working and it fills the space. So they got a new one, but they don't use it still. They still use the old one. And which is the same thing with those phones, you know. I mean, at least Mom kind of knew how to use her old phone, although she didn't really, but she hasn't been using it very well. So this Jitterbug, I don't know that she's going to be able to. They don't use it unless they're out and about, and they don't go out that much. So my dad uses his more. In fact, he was out and about today, went over to Hanger Clinic.
Oh, very good.
He has a boot, and so he came over, and then he came to my clinic to see me and saw my office for the first time.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and he called me from the Jitterbug phone because I recognized the new number. I was like, "Woo!" He goes, "Yeah, I like this thing." So, but he's
So
a
that's
little sharper than
progress.
she is.
That's
Yeah.
good
So,
progress.
but yeah, there's so many, but they both have iPads. I think I've told y'all before that my mother reads books on her iPad, and so whenever she needs a new book, I will load it on, my Kindle app, which is connected to theirs because both of their iPads are on my Apple ID, so I control everything. It's like these are my iPads, except I do not have.
They don't
Well,
know.
what's great about it is like photographs. If I download photographs from my grandchildren or whatever, they go into my photo stream, goes directly into theirs too. So Mom can go, oh, I can look on the photo app and see the kids. My Facebook is also on Mom's. That's been a little challenging a couple of times because if they don't really have any friends, so if she was on Facebook, they wouldn't see anybody. So I put my Facebook, and I never look at Facebook unless my mother says, oh, did you see the pictures of Ophelia on there? I'm like, oh, okay, I'll go look. A couple of times my mother has clicked on something,
Oh.
which has, liked something or done something. And then my kids will say, do you know you did this on Facebook? And I'm like, no, I haven't looked at Facebook in weeks. They're like, well, something got posted. Did you mean to add this to your story? And I'm like, my what? And I'm like, I don't even know about it myself.
I think this one.
Yeah. Well, I really don't care.
Because there's
Yeah.
links and stuff too.
Yeah.
Like that.
Well, I've told my mother, and she's still sharp enough. I may have to cut her off eventually, but she sees all this stuff on. Well, she said, I want to buy one of those little change purses like I saw on Facebook. I'm like, oh, great. If I look on Facebook, it's not going to show up.
Yeah.
But so I have to look on hers, and then eventually it'll come up in the feed. And I'm like, well, we're not ordering anything from Facebook.
That's-
I said, I will find you the same thing, maybe from Amazon or some other place. So show me what it is that you like. But I'm like, everything that's on Facebook, we're not ordering through Facebook. Sorry. We're just not going to do that.
Yeah, I do think those apps and social media are super important to keep up with because it really the technology piece affects everything. I mean, if we don't know how to use, or our parents don't know how to use Uber, the Uber app, or Lyft,
Right.
or
Well, one good
all
thing
of
about
those
the
things.
jitterbugs,
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this about it, but if you get the higher level service plan, it's like double the price. It's like instead of $19.99 a month, it's like $39.99 a month. There's a button at the bottom that you can call anytime, and it's like a lifeline thing. I mean, they can push it at any time. They can get somebody on the phone. I think
Oh, that's great.
24/7,
Yeah.
and they will also set up a lift for you, so you don't have to use the app.
oh, that's
They will
great.
schedule the lift to come. They will, and of course your credit card's on file with the Lively, the Jitterbug for the phone, and they set up a lift for you, and they do all the scheduling, so you don't even have to use the Lyft app.
Yeah.
You just have to push the button and say you want to go somewhere.
Yep. You just tell the person that answers that you want to schedule a lift.
Yeah.
And I guess give the particulars. I haven't looked into it because we just have the basic plan. Because my dad's still driving, so they don't really need that yet. But I'm
Yeah.
thinking, like when my dad was hospitalized and he didn't drive for a couple of weeks after he got out of the hospital. And I work full time, and at the time I was in a boot, and I couldn't even drive myself. Thinking, oh, how am I going to do this? Now they've never used Lyft or Uber, and I don't know how comfortable they feel with it, but I could get them comfortable
Yeah.
with it if we had to use it. And it's nice to know that that's a feature that they will set up for you on
Yeah.
the Jitterbug.
Well, technology just gives us options and
Yes.
keeps our independence in a good place. Even
Yeah.
delivery services are using Amazon. You know,
Yeah.
if you're homebound or aren't it's harder to get out. Those kinds of things are critical, and if we can embrace it, the
Yeah.
more the better. Hello.
But the only other bad thing is when I was thinking about my mom's iPads, both of my parents' iPads, when they have a problem with it and you ask them, well, what do you see on the screen, and try to help them? Well, I don't know. And
Yeah.
every app is different. And the keyboard on every app is different. And the keyboard in one app may be different depending on whether you're in this screen or in that screen. And so that gets challenging to do over the phone.
Yes.
And my family, my husband and my son will see me on the phone after I get off the phone with my mother after counseling her through trying to find whatever on her iPad. And it takes 30 minutes, and we eventually give up. And she'll say, "Oh, just do it when you're over here the next time. I'll just live without it." I'm like, "Okay," but you know, it's,
Well,
that's challenging.
well, and one other thing on the technology inputs, I think being open to them and knowing how to use them, and in a lot of ways, social media is a good example of keeping you connected with other people and relevant as to what's happening in younger people's lives, so that you can make better connections and have more people in your community and in your space to help you. And I mean, it's all kind of a interconnected little web. And then the last thing I think of when I think of technology is news, where you get the news. It's not, sadly, a newspaper being delivered to your front door is getting to be a rarer and more rare situation. And so more news is coming through apps. I mean, today's kids get that from TikTok, and that is no joke. That there was a study, they get their news through TikTok. And so the news is reaching people in different spaces. And I think, to keep up and to know what's happening in your world, it's essential to have an open mind about where your news is coming from. And that's a whole other can of worms. Like, what kind of news? Is it legitimate news? Is it fake news or whatever? But all these things.
Like upload the News for Jack's app.
Oh, it's great. Yes.
You can do
All those
that.
things. And that's what I
We're
mean.
Unbiased and fair.
Yes. So, in here in Jacksonville today, the WJCT, is morning
but how
newsletter. There are plenty of good sources, but I think the point is, you have to be open to being in those spaces to get your news. Increasingly so now. So.
I'm walking in late, so I'm just going to jump in because
And
you may
have
have
a haircut too. it
Yes,
seems.
thank you.
Everyone was inspired by Debbie last week. Everyone got haircuts. Yeah, looks very nice.
Thank you. I think that another part of that technology is being aware of scammers.
Yeah.
And I read a really interesting study in AARP where it says for lack of a better term, the nicer your workplace is, the more likely you are to be scammed. And they use the example of like a university professor where, most people are working in a trust-based atmosphere, that they're not really looking at people with questions or doubts. And that if you are in a place like that, then you're just more likely to be scammed because you're just taking people at face value. I have some people in my life that I'm like, no, do not click on the link. Do not click on, answer the text. You let that call go to voicemail. But I think, we clearly see where those who are older are more vulnerable, and and where I'm going with this is being savvy enough to understand what the latest scam technology looks like.
And you get that from the news that you get through your app or your email.
Are reading a resource like AARP that you know is vetted and trusted. So,
I mean, it's even something we have to watch out for. You have to Google more, even in your, the middle age, because I found a link for a position that I thought my daughter would be interested on LinkedIn, and I forwarded it to her, and she applied, but it's not a real company. And I mean, it's like, just, I wouldn't have even thought that, but she said there's no one connected. This person's not, there's like, they don't really have a presence. They had a website and everything. But yeah, so, I mean, we all have to kind of guard against that. And I didn't even know about that. Yeah.
It's sad.
That's why we have to trust our youths, the young people in our life, and listen to them for some direction on these topics, and make notes to ourselves to be more open as we age about technology. Does anyone else have anything else to add about technology before we move into investing our resources? Yes.
I'll add one thing. I think one of the things about technology is that if you don't use it, you lose it.
Mm-hmm.
And I see this in my practice that, I sit in front of a computer 10 hours a day, and there's all these different things that, things that I try to do. And, I've gotten really a lot better about, really pushing through and seeing if I can figure out the answer. And, of course I give up in complete frustration when it doesn't work, but sometimes it does work,
Mm-hmm.
But I've also, there's some tasks that I do maybe once every 2 weeks. Well, I can't, I don't retain it. And so I write myself notes, about all the steps to see, and I have like a little library of, library, it's just a couple sheets of paper of, things. It helps, but I am this way, and I'm 71, so I don't know what it's going to be like when I'm 91. That it's very hard to retain it, because it is so different. And somebody said something about the language the other day or today, and I was like, oh yeah, the language is like, I can describe it, but invariably I'm probably using the wrong term. Mm-hmm. So it is a matter of practicing. And, when you have an assistant who's like a crutch, for me, she's a crutch, did I tell you this last week, this story? I love this story. This is from NPR. I'm a big NPR listener. And,
You're in the right room.
And they were interviewing all the old guys, like, Scott Simon and, Bob Edwards when he was still alive, and, just different people that had, worked for NPR for a long, long time. And they were all working part-time now. And they were like, well, so what is the best part of working part-time? And every one of them said, I have an IT guy.
Yeah.
They said that was the best part of having, just to be connected. That was the very best part. Not the work, not the comrades, nothing. The IT guy was it. Yeah. And that tells you, it's like that could, somebody should just have that, just create that job and
I am the IT guy.
Yes, you are.
Well, see, that's a perfect. And I told my assistant, I said, you could you forget being a legal secretary or paralegal, go start your business and go around and help all people like me. When they quit, they're like, WTF, none of us know what to do. We're there arguing with the machine. And, even today, I was trying to find out how many Hilton honor points I have. Do you know, I finally gave up. And I'm pretty good. I mean, I feel like I'm at least competent, not talented, but competent. I tried everything.
Do you not have the app? The app.
I have the app. I have
you right at the top right-hand corner.
in the app.
Yeah.
Well, I went online, so maybe that was my
go to the
problem.
app.
So, I have to get the app.
Oh, you don't have the app.
Okay, problem
Okay,
solved.
see,
Yeah. Problem solved.
Think tank right here.
You just have to know your login.
Yeah.
I think somebody
face right
should start a business.
Yes,
And
that's
just
smart.
go around. I mean, you would make a fortune in my neighborhood.
Mhm. Yeah.
With all, all these people.
Good idea. Thank you.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Goes right there.
Yeah. Well, I think
I'm so
the young people once again need to get in there and make a business out of this because it is a need. But I will say too, I think it's human nature, no matter how old we are, to have to hunt. If you're not doing something every day, all the time, it is a learning curve every time. I mean, when I was working at Bowles, one of my jobs was to fill the marquee, this digital marquee. And oh Lord, like the software for this deal was really complicated. And I would go in and fill it up, maybe once a month and get them all scheduled, all the events. But every time I did it, it's like, how did I do that? I have no idea. So I'd have to hunt and pack, and it would take, a lot longer. And it was that way for lots of things. And now that I don't have a tech department, like the tech guy can't come around from the other side of Bowles Hall into my office and show me what to do. Now it's a lot of hunting and pecking for most things. So I think some of that we do have to just kind of understand that that's the way it is, unless it's a daily chore. But anyway,
Is she trying to just make me feel better?
yes, and I hear you. You're preaching to the choir.
I give you a lot of credit for what you're doing.
Yes.
For as
Oh my gosh.
being as active as you are.
Yes, completely. All right. So let's move away from that scary technology and move into investing step 16, which is investing our resources in younger generations with the good ideas about helping people and putting more attention towards service and other people. I think this falls into there was another step about becoming in the process of lessening your stuff and yourself, I think is important as we get older. It's not all about us. It's about what we have honed and the strengths we have to share with others. And I think that's helpful. There's some brain chemistry that happens there when we're looking out for other people and our focus is not inward but outward. We are healthier people and we can, accomplish more. So I think, I don't know, I have also seen trends of older adults kind of getting into panic mode a little bit about, I've got to, and it's a worthy thought, I can't invest in others and volunteer. I've got to figure out how I'm going to make all this work financially or how I'm going to even live day to day with all these challenges. But I do think it's important to think about ways we can benefit our communities and use what we have to make our community and smaller worlds a better place. So that's kind of a esoteric concept, but I do think it's important.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
And actually, I was going to add, because I have two friends that they're now probably late 80s, that were actually, when you met them or conversed with them or hung out with them, you would have thought the younger one was the older one, probably by a good 10 years. Because she had become very inward focused, very much about aches and pains and, what was going wrong in her life, what was happening to her. And the other one, the older one, is my friend that had the dog, which, one, I felt like that had her to get out, but she volunteered. She volunteered at the church. She helped the people in her condo. And she said, if I didn't get out of bed because I hurt, I would never get out of bed, because the other person would say, oh, I couldn't get out of bed because I hurt. I can say that at a certain point in your life, you're going to hurt.
I injured myself last night while sleeping. I did something to my knee, and I have no idea, but I did get out of bed.
Yeah, but very good. But her life to me seemed so much richer because she volunteered. She looked at other people and said, what can I do to help? Instead of being so inwardly focused about, everything that's wrong with me kind of thing. And it sort of gets into that whole organ recital. Like, I'm going to tell you about all my digestive system, anything else that's not working or not working. And you're just like, going, really? I don't want to know about this. So of being mindful myself of as I age, And the one who volunteered also was interacting with younger people. And there is that peril as you get older that your peers are no longer with you. Mm-hmm. Or if you move and you have to make new friends.
Because I work at Volunteers in Medicine, I mean, that's 250 people come to our clinic every month. And a lot of them are in their at least late 70s, early 80s, and you'd never know it. A couple of them. One guy said on Friday, he goes, oh yeah, my 82nd birthday is coming up. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I mean, he's one of our qualifiers. He's one of the people who talks to patients or potential patients and figures out all their income to see if they qualify for our services, if they meet our guidelines. And it's a complicated job. And a lot of our jobs are complicated. And we have many volunteers in their 80s. And they are amazing people. And you could tell this is like one of the highlights of their week. But it's a highlight of our weeks, too, when these people are here, because they're so interesting. And it's just wonderful to have them there. And it keeps them young, you can tell. And it's just such a great thing. And I try to tell people, just go volunteer somewhere. It really gets you out of yourself. Mm-hmm. It really does. You can tell. That our clinic, we talk about what we do for our patients, but we also talk about what we do for our volunteers. I mean, our volunteers get so much, almost as much out of the volunteering as our patients do. Mm-hmm. It's just really neat. So anyway, I'll throw that out there.
Yeah, I think, again, through our lives, we gain many strengths, and at some point it doesn't do us any good to hold it back and not give to others. And I think too, if we're thinking strategically, the more younger people we help along the way, the more young people there are going to be in our lives when we need them. So there's a little strategy when we're thinking unselfishly. Anyway, does anyone else have anything to add on that topic? All right. Well, let's move on to the one I skipped, which is, and this is kind of the same, kind of along that really worked out. The flow is better this way. Number 14, which is to establish, build, and stay connected to a reliable, loving, and accessible community, and to pick your person or people. And again, the thought is, community is everything, and you gotta. Again, the couple that I helped in South Florida, they had no one. They literally had no one. They didn't have friends who lived near, but they didn't know their neighbors. They didn't go to church or have a special interest group that people they like to hang out with, there was no one. And that was a huge problem because they were forced to depend and trust people like the, caregiver who took the debit card. Those more untrustworthy people became, the center of their life and resources. So I just think it's essential, and that thought should come to mind to us as we consider where we're going to live. Maybe I want to live in a place where I know people, or where I can get to know people, and that there's easy access to them. I think anything that we're interested in, where there is a group that we can meet with, the more people who see us and can say or miss us, is better. And I just think, we can even do that by going to the same restaurant every Thursday morning for coffee. And so someone will miss it. If we're not there on Thursday, someone will say, oh, I wonder where old Susanna went. Haven't seen her in a while. And she's usually hungry at this time of the day on Thursdays. And there's also the benefit of, supporting local businesses. So I think, I just think community is something that can really sustain us as we get older, and something that we can incorporate into our planning. So those are my thoughts. If anyone has any other ideas, feel free to share.
I just have one quick thing that pulls together a lot of the threads that we were talking about. It pulls together the who you trust and the technology, and then you can find community in the strangest places. But my mom in her 80s the other day was telling a story about, she likes to go to this Hallmark store that helps her ship. They have like a small postal kind of support thing in the Hallmark store. She knows the people. She goes in there regularly, and she was looking for my address, and she has a whole bunch of contacts for me. And the person said, you really should organize your contacts. And there were 5 contacts for me. And she was, you can consolidate those, So she might do it now because the Hallmark person told her. Her friend at the Hallmark store.
She might help her do it.
So anyway, but it also, she loves going in there because they give her a lot of attention. They help, they, bring things to her or whatever. And it's just that nice sense. And again, you can find it, even if you don't have a lot of friends or whatever. Just those moments are so important to older people, to get that human interaction.
Just real quick to add on, I just read an article today, and I didn't realize it was an actual thing, but there is a slow line at the checkout. Do our Publix and Winn-Dixie have?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's where you,
social?
yes, it's like if you want to take your time and have a little chitty chat.
Yeah,
have
there
a
is.
good time
And
with the register.
My mom won't go to stores that only have self checkout
Yeah, I don't
because
like it either. I
she
feel nervous
she
when I do
she
it.
wants to
Yeah.
be able to have that interaction. So
Yeah.
she's boycotting certain places now.
Perfect.
So are all lines considered slow lines? In
Good
I,
question.
what is it?
I've heard it in Europe. They have. So there are it's particularly in grocery stores. It's intentional that they give you a line where you can chat more with the cashier.
Because I think I've heard about it in either the Netherlands or Denmark, and I think that's another place to look at. Is those countries, the Scandinavian countries in particular, seem to do a better job of building community for older people, and not saying, oh, let's all hop on an airplane and move to Norway, but look at those very attentional things that they do, and how do we replicate it in our lives. Just like your mother saying, I'm not going to go to a self-checkout line. Well, making that choice, do I do a self-checkout, or am I going through the line where I can maybe talk to someone?
So if you could talk to somebody, is that considered a slow line in Norway?
I think no. And correct me if I'm wrong, but what I remembered it was they were lines that you should know that you're going to be getting in there and the people in front of you are going to be having maybe a conversation with a checkout person like, oh, have you tried this product? Tell me, did you like, this juice kind of thing? Have you enjoyed the weather today? Rather than necessarily,
Conscious
it's like
conversation.
yeah,
It's not just
that's a
any-
great way.
It's not just any cashier.
Conscious conversation. I like that phrase.
So I just
write that
tell you
down.
this story. I lived in California for about 7.5 years, and when I first came back to Florida, I thought I would lose my mind. I was like,
Everybody there moves fast. And
how in creation can it take 10 minutes to get through one person in the checkout line? I mean, it was just blew my mind. I mean, I was just like,
Blood pressure was going
anyway, it
so
was
they all felt like soul lines.
it was so obvious and such a major difference. I was just shocked. I mean, shocked. I was just like, and I never felt like I was a person in a hurry until I moved back to Florida, and it was just like,
So I have a question for you. Have you adapted to the Florida way?
Yeah.
Sort of?
I think probably,
Embracing
yeah,
slow life?
probably for the most part. I think, yeah,
Well,
more than likely.
So that's just the South for you, huh?
true.
I was going to just add that I go to the Lakewood Winn-Dixie a lot because for a long time it was just so easy to pull in after bowls and keep moving to get dog food or whatever. But I liken it, and even more so now, to like a communist grocery store, like where there's one apple. Like it's not like going to Publix where you have 10 apples. Oh, any kind. There's like 2. Or dog food. Yeah, that's fine. But anyway, the lights are brighter. It's a little starker. I don't know. I still shop there almost every day. But sometimes I'm like, why don't I go to Publix? It's such a happier place.
Right there in San Marco.
I do, yes.
Super
Well,
cool.
and it is, but I don't like to get out of my car and get in an elevator with
know, it's
people.
weird.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
So you're stuck in your ways. Maybe you need to,
No,
take
I need
some
to
of your own
embrace
advice.
change and technology and things like elevators. What? Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah, it is awesome. Anyway, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to throw shade on Winn-Dixie, but it just occurred to me.
That store's been there how many decades?
So it's one of
Oh, like
the tenants
long
that has stayed.
Yeah.
Tijuana Flats closed
I heard
just
that. A bunch
out of the
them.
blue, yeah. And then there's always something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the book nook left there.
Oh, the book nook. Oh, where books were there for decades, like the same book. Uh-huh.
They didn't move.
No,
Just
but it
like
was
the
always so
Winn-Dixie, The
fun.
same apple.
Yeah.
Yes, just one apple.
We're tight.
Communist one.
Yeah, right.
Can I just add something that this is all so good? When I moved back to Jacksonville, which has been about 10 years now, came home,
Where were you?
Atlanta, for like 30-something years. And well, in Atlanta, a friend of mine and I decided we're going to start a book club. So we did. And it turned out to be a social book club. We called it Book and Bottle Club. But really, it grew to about 30-something people. It became way too big, but we sure had fun. It was community. And then when I moved here, I'm like, oh my God, I need a book club. I tried and tried and tried. One I tried with one of my sisters, and then they decided they didn't want to read, they wanted to go on trips. So that was the end of that one. But I tried another one, and it's turned out that we read, which is fabulous, but we're also a mini support group. It's amazing. And I mean, so talk about, just creating a little community ourselves without realizing it was going to be so good. So, anyway, just another idea.
And the last thing I'll say on that topic, and y'all feel free to chime in with whatever is on your mind, but picking your person or people, that is a direct concept from being appointed someone's power of attorney without being told so ahead of time. So I think picking your person is a great idea, but I also would add to tell that person that that you're their person. So, but it is important to think about who's going to be the person to, that you're going to depend on, that you're going to appoint as in a special role, and communicating all of those things. Super important. But anyway, does anyone else have anything to add before we wrap it up? Uh-oh.
And then when you pick that person, tell them things that are relative to your care.
Yes. Right.
Like you've remarried.
Oh, gosh. Oh, you got to tell, for the benefit of the group, you must share.
Okay. My mother died in 1995. My parents were living in Ocala at that time. We had grown up in Knoxville, Tennessee. And shortly after my mother died, my father moved in with a friend, which for a while I thought they were friends, and then decided they were in a relationship. And we would see my dad and Sandra, and they were very cute and sweet together. And every once in a while I would say, if y'all ever decide to get married, that'd be great, just kind of in passing. And they shared a house together. They each had their own room, and I didn't ask for details. And would go on trips together and, go get ice cream and all that. So I knew I was my father's power of attorney and medical power of attorney and executor of the will. And then when he had his final illness, he went into the hospital on his 91st birthday, died in mid-April. And I had gone down maybe 2 weeks later, and I knew Sandra was supposed to get the house, which I was completely fine with. It was a little tiny ranch house. She had done a yeoman's job of taking care of my father, was really nicer to my father than my mother would have been. And she was, I think, she's 15 years older than me, so she was probably like 15, 20 years younger than my father. And I had stopped at the little tax office that my father had worked at, and then for about the last 3-4 years they had done his taxes for him. And it was a little tiny, principal. It wasn't part of a chain. And I was saying to the principal, I don't know what to do about the house because I don't know how it's deeded, because I was supposed to go in there and sign his tax returns because he had not signed them. They had done them, but he had not signed them before he got sick and died. So she goes, oh, let's look it up and find out what, I can do this. So she put in types, and she starts reading and says it's deeded to his name and his wife's name, which was her name. And she looks at me, and she pulls the screen monitor around so I can see it. And it's like a tennis match, because we look at it, and then we look at each other, and we look back at it, and we look at each other. We do this about 4 times. And she said, were they married? And I said in a high C voice, I don't know. So she looks at the tax return because it has been completed as widowed and not married. And she says, we can't file this. And I said, okay. And then she pulls out, let's say they've done the last 4 years of his tax returns. And she says, and we're going to have to amend all of these. Oof. If that's the case, depending on when they got married. So I drive to the house thinking, okay, how do I mention this? And she has a letter from my dad, and it's very clear that, one, they had been married for 10 years.
Oh my gosh. I didn't realize it was that long.
10 years. For those of you that are Presbyterian, Elizabeth Bullock's son had married them. And yes, and it was very clear from the letter that my father had left me, that he wanted her to get his IRS pension because he'd retired from the IRS. But, the problem was the death certificate, which I had filed with the knowledge I had, said widowed instead of married. And so in order for that, I had to get it amended. So when I called my funeral director, because my father had been cremated as he wanted, his response was, "Oh shit." And I thought, oh, that's not good, because funeral directors are used to people getting emotional, and they're rational, and you have like the 3 ex-wives and their children all fighting over somebody's remains, and I thought, oh, you've rattled him, and that's not a good sign. It's like when you take your kid to the pediatrician and the pediatrician goes, "Oh, this looks really bad." Yeah. You're thinking, "Oh, that's not good." Yeah. So, the man who spent the last probably decade of his life saying, "I don't want to create a problem, I don't want to be in any trouble," created massive problems for me, because I had to get a lawyer to redo the death certificates. We had to redo all the tax returns. We had to pay taxes on, that, and penalties because he owed more money.
How long did that take to rectify?
Well, if I hadn't had all of that, it would have taken a lot less time. My father's estate wasn't like really extensive, so it probably took 6 to 8 months, but it was long. It took so much longer than if
and a lot of work, a lot of moving parts.
Amazing, considering he worked for the IRS.
Oh yeah, yes, he worked for the IRS. He wrote tax code for the IRS.
What this is going to do to you.
Yes, and that's why I say,
Yeah. So it sounds like your dad,
and he was cognitive.
he did a great job with forming community with his wife.
Oh, yeah.
But he got an F on communication, which is the
I
other
would say
big-
F minus.
F minus,
Yes,
minus.
Yes, because like it was clear she was supposed to get the cards. The cards were old, but they weren't tagged correctly, and I thought I was going to have to drive down to Marion County, and I kept working my way in the courthouse up to higher and higher people. So it was just lots of things that someone who, because he had a law degree.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's one of the worst stories I think I've ever heard. Yeah, you completely
I really
win.
win. So, but that falls under the share pertinent information.
Yes, for sure. Yep. Yeah, big WTF.
Yeah. I'm amazing. Well, we got away with it at the hospital because she never said, no one had ever told me, because I was medical power attorney and I was making medical decisions. Now, I made it in conjunction with her. Fortunately, we got along really well, but if something had come out, that would have been like...
She never told you either.
No, because he didn't want to tell me. Her family knew. Her sons and daughter knew.
But Beth didn't know.
And my brother...
But Beth, think about how experienced you are now.
Yes.
Nothing is going to...
No.
Nothing's going to phase
And you know how to do all that stuff that you just
So if you
mentioned.
rattle me, then you
You're a
know, oh,
professional.
this is really bad.
Yeah. Well, there's that. But I mean, you're very prepared now.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
You've been through it all.
And I think that's part of the process. Like, you've learned all that stuff, and you learned it the hard way, and it had multiple pieces. But now, if someone else is going through something similar, it would shock me, for one. But two, you can know how to help.
Just go ask them.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And my brother, who lives on the West Coast, said, "Oh, I thought they'd been married for years," and I thought, could you not have said something to me?
Right.
So he had an idea that
He
was
had-
never told outright, or he
No,
was
no, no.
told?
He never would have been told outright. He just thought so, but he just didn't choose to like mention that small fact. Like, I really think they could be married.
So, my brother, I have a brother who's been married 5 times. He's now going through the 5th divorce. But when he was married the 4th time, and before the divorce was over, he had a total emergency, really bad. He was in a induced coma for 21 days in the hospital. Guess who had to make all the decisions?
Oh, no, wife number 3. Or...
The estranged wife. Because they'd been estranged. They were going through the divorce, but they were still married. So it scared me because thank God she didn't hate him or hate us. So
Another reason to get legit about your legal affairs, yeah. So, all right. Well, that wraps it up. I'm going to turn this puppy off and thank y'all for being with us. Thank you for being with us in this fourth episode of Season 3 of the Grand Plans podcast. You can find this recording anywhere you get your podcasts. I also have them cataloged on the Grand Plans website, which can be found at www.mygrandplans.com. Thanks for being with us today.